Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip? Try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
No one is going to pick Indiana. No one's going to pick Indiana to make it close, honestly. Like, you could get tremendous odds if you pick OKC in 7.
I think that taking the series over 5.5 games, the last 2 NBA Finals series ended in 5. I think this one goes 6. I think the Thunder will get the job done, but I think the Pacers are just too strong of a team and too talented of a team and too deep of a team to lose in 5 or fewer games.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The Steelers' interest in Aaron Rodgers as a joke. Your boy went off about the entire situation and why it taken so long to forget him. Terry Bradshaw getting involved.
Yeah, and saying basically, what are you bringing him in for 1 year? All of this drama for 1 year at this guy, where he is now in his career is he's washed.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune in to Game Time Decisions weekdays.
Good morning. Welcome to the Newswire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish as we get ready for the Stanley Cup Finals and NBA Finals. 24 hours away tomorrow. We preview the, of course, Stanley Cup Finals and a couple of days away from the NBA. So it gives us lots of time to discuss Major League Baseball. We'll dive into that today with Matt Lutovsky of Sporting News. Also the latest in sports wagering, including this new tax in Illinois on sports betting, a quarter on every single bet that you folks in Illinois are making. We'll get to that as well. We'll also dive in to the latest news, notes, and information on all sports, including the WNBA, NBA, Major League Baseball, and some big NFL news, as we'll get to here in a second. But first, let's start off with one of the stories that we've been following throughout the spring, and now we're going to be doing it into the summer, the sweepstakes market, these casinos that have been operating essentially all over the country in different markets. Some states say yes, some states say no. Well, in Louisiana, officially, it is a passing of eliminating sweepstakes casinos in the state of Louisiana. 99-0. It was called Senate Bill 181. And as of right now, they're going to be removed. Now, remember, the reason why some of these casinos are operating is because the sweepstakes casinos exploit legal loopholes to avoid regulation. And this is what's going on in the prediction markets as well. In fact, there was a very significant national column on that over the last 24 hours too. The bottom line is that the sports books want all of the different ways that you could gamble regulated like themselves and taxed like themselves. If these companies are finding a way around it, we're going to have stories on this every single day. So in Louisiana, they're saying, no, you got to pay your taxes or you can't operate. Meanwhile, very big story from the National Football League percolating last night, and a surprise. As the Detroit Lions not going to replace this guy, Frank Ragnow decides to retire, sort of out of nowhere. There was some speculation he wanted a new contract, arguably the best center in the National Football League for the Detroit Lions. He was just 29 years old. So I guess we'll wait and see if this really does mean he wants a new contract, or will he really retire? Usually under the age of 30, no one in the National Football League retires. But Ragnow calling it quits, at least for now. Over in Major League Baseball, a home run in the National League for Shohei Ohtani. It's his 23rd. He ties Cal Raleigh for the most in Major League Baseball. Francisco Alvarez did have a big hit for the Mets, 10th inning RBI. Mets hold on for a 4-3 win over the Los Angeles Dodgers. Mets are playing good baseball coming off a sweep of the Rockies, now beating the Dodgers. Here's manager Carlos Mendoza on picking up the W.
How big was that for Alvarez to get a hard hit there to the opposite field.
Yeah, I feel like he's been taking a lot better swings as of late. The past few games, I feel like he's getting on time. He's got some rhythm. He's recognizing pitches a lot better. So I think he's making progress, and it was good to see him obviously coming through right there against a pretty good pitcher on Scott. We run out second base, not only going the other way, but driving the ball with authority.
What were those last couple of innings like for you? It seemed you had the game pretty secure, and then they came back on.
Well, I don't know about securing against a lineup like that. You never feel, like until you get that last out, that's a pretty good lineup, pretty good team, and they're, whether it's kind of like the same way we feel with our offense. Guy gets on, and before you know it, the tying run is at home plate, and you feel good about your chances. They got to be feeling the same way, and that's why you got to play all 27, and got to keep competing. And then we went to extras today, and I'm glad we were able to cross those two to home plate. So.
Meanwhile, hottest team in baseball right now, the Milwaukee Brewers. Of course, they are just the train that keeps on rolling every season. You think they're done, and then they win a bunch of games. They've won now 8 in a row. They beat the Reds 3-2. They're right back in the playoff picture once again, although, again, it's just June, so it's early. Christian Yelich hit a home run. Brewers win again. On the losing side is Terry Francona, certainly unhappy with the end result.
Anything that you can think of, common theme, Terry, in these final 3 innings when you're trying to score, and is it a matter of not getting the leadoff runner on? And when you're thinking about what the commonality?
I don't know that I do, because we show up to try to win tonight. It's different. There's something different. Every game has its own personality and things like that. I mean, I understand we haven't come through. That's the commonality. But I don't think if I had a reason, we wouldn't be struggling doing it.
Tough to score runs sometimes for the Reds. For the Tigers, that was the deal. Have all the pitching and not the hitting. I think they got the hitting too. Kerry Carpenter hit 3 home runs last night for Detroit, and they get to 40 wins. They beat the White Sox 13-1. Also, San Francisco took on San Diego last night. Jose Iglesias in a pitcher's duel ended up hitting a sacrifice fly in the 10th and lifts the Padres over the Giants 1-0. Logan Webb was fantastic. 8 innings pitched, no earned runs, 7 strikeouts, but manager Bob Melvin can't seem to find an answer as to why his team can't score runs.
Yeah, look, he pitched great. I mean, you pitch every inning like that, when with no runs on the board against a lineup like that. I mean, that's as well as he's probably pitched against that team. Who knows him, has a lot of at-bats off him, pitched a little bit differently, made some adjustments and did some things, to put himself in a position to go 8 innings and shut them out. I mean, didn't walk anybody. Like I said, I don't know how you can pitch much better than that.
There's a lot of opportunities to score throughout the night, but in the 10th to have 2 pretty hard hit balls that are...
Pretty hard hit? Extremely hard hit. Really, the last couple innings were probably our best at-bats. Throughout the course of the game, we smoked some balls in the later innings. Now, we had some opportunities early on, and that ended up biting us, that we couldn't push one across. We had the bases loaded a couple times, and what were we, 1 for, we left 12 on base. But I thought our at-bats were good and a little unlucky in the last inning to hit 2 balls that hard.
Meanwhile, the Boston Red Sox seem to be fading fast. Another loss for them yesterday. This time a 7-6 final. Lots of home runs being hit off Red Sox pitching. Joe Adell hit 2. Mike Trout had 3 hits. He also hit a home run. 7-6 the final. Manager Alex Cora seems to be searching for answers from the pitching staff and also trying to win games.
Been like that the whole season. We played well in Kansas City, and then the first game in Detroit was a tough one. Going into Tampa, the first one was a tough one. So we just we're not that far off. I truly believe that. But we have to, make sure we start off series the right way. I think that's how you do it, right? We did it in Atlanta. We won the first one, and then we won the series, right? So that first game, that first inning of series, we have to be better. I think there's 2 aspects, pitching-wise, that have caught my attention throughout the season. Is the first inning and the bottom of the lineup. We have to be better at that, and hopefully tomorrow is the start.
All right, so we'll see if the Red Sox get on the right track. The A's cannot get on the right track. I mean, this is day after day here. They've lost 7 straight and 18 out of 19. The Twins keep rolling. Byron Buxton drove in 5 runs, 10-4 the final. Sacramento A's not having the season that they thought they would have. And hey, the Rockies finally won a game. They win their 10th game of the season. They beat the Marlins 6-4. Hunter Goodman had a big game. They end their 8-game losing streak. Also in Major League Baseball, couple of quick news and notes for tonight. Very rare to get one of the top prospects in all of baseball in the American League and nationally making their Major League debuts. Jack Cack will make his debut for the Kansas City Royals, and looks like Ronnie Mauricio is being called up by the New York Mets. So check out the games tonight. You'll see some top rookies making their debut this evening. If you want to check out our streaming options right now for SportsGrid, just download the SportsGrid app. It's available for both iOS and Android. All you have to do is take out your phone and scan that QR code. SportsGrid app is streaming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We updated it a couple of months ago to give you better streaming options, higher quality, and also giving you the very latest odds on all the events coming up, which would include the Stanley Cup Finals coming up tomorrow night. And we've got the NBA Finals starting on Thursday. And don't forget, the last huge race of the year in horse racing, the Belmont Stakes, coming up on Saturday as well. We'll be right back with Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News. Big series with the Mets and Dodgers. We'll recap and preview and also talk a little NL West baseball. We return next on NewsWire.
Falcons are actually relieved that he's kind of not there to create more of a distraction. Look, I mean, I said it the day it happened. It was one of the stupider decisions I've ever seen by a professional NFL franchise to sign a quarterback to a $180 million contract and then draft his replacement exactly 5 weeks later. This was a terrible organizational decision by the Falcons. Now, they're going to spin this, and this is what's annoying about the Falcons and their PR staff. They're going to spin this as if this is the plan we had all along. This is the plan that when, Kirk Cousins either got hurt or didn't play well or got too old, we were going to have Penix come in. And guess what? The new plan is now we're going to keep Kirk Cousins as a backup. So if Michael Penix gets hurt, we told you so. We were right for keeping him on the roster. We were smart for keeping him here. No, this whole thing has been an abject disaster.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high, but the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that ring. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Steelers' interest in Aaron Rodgers as a joke. Your boy went off about the entire situation and why it taken so long to forget him. Terry Bradshaw getting involved.
Yeah, and saying basically, what are you bringing him in for 1 year? All of this drama for 1 year at this guy, where he is now in his career is he's washed.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, let's talk to Major League Baseball with Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News. We'll dive into some of the big series going on right now. Matt, thanks for coming on once again. Great to see you. All right, so Dodgers dismantle the Yankees. They win 2 out of 3. They get the Mets in town. Mets playing good baseball again, taking care of the Rockies, and then winning again last night. So certainly let's give the Mets some credit here. Built to win this year, no question about it. They've avoided the injury bug for the most part thus far. They win in LA yesterday, and I suppose there is some semblance of the thought that these two teams could face off in the National League Championship Series. But again, long way to go. Philly's still very much in the mix and going to have a lot of other teams as well.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's any question that these are two of the front runners, and two teams people are maybe hoping meet again after last year, and we got the big markets and all those great storylines that certain people care about and other people despise. But either way, I mean, we saw last night we were treated to a sort of fun, exciting game. We got some late inning heroics from Otani, and then the Mets managed to pull it out. And the Dodgers actually got a good start and sort of wasted it, which for them, with given some of their injuries and some of their other pitching woes, you feel like you can't waste decent starts from your pitchers. It wasn't great, but it was decent. It was good enough. You like to think the offense is going to carry you home. Didn't quite do it last night. Testament to the Mets pitching. But I think it just shows us what we can expect from these teams, and why I think if they do keep playing like they're playing, we'll see what they do with the deadlines, of course. But they could meet in the postseason. I think it'd be a fun series again.
Padres and Giants squaring off last night. Great pitching matchup for both teams. Padres have like a half or 1 game lead right now as it stands in the standings, Matt. But, I do believe the Padres offense is going to be better than what we've shown. But, Matt, the Giants offense, my gosh, like the last couple of weeks here has just completely gone the other way. It seems like they have the pitching, but, unless something changes offensively or Willy Adames gets hot or one of those guys that they have in San Francisco, I mean, this 33-27 record, I have a feeling that's going to go the other way.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. I think we've talked about the Giants a few times, and every time it's like, man, that pitching it'd be so nice if they just had, one more hitter or just a little more consistency, because they're right there with the pitching. Great bullpen, obviously solid starters. And, we saw last night, even with that, they couldn't, quite get it done. So, is it going to be internal? Are they going to have to make a move? What is the move? I don't know. I feel like they're good enough to compete with that pitching, and we all know what hot pitching can do in the playoffs, but it just feels like they're just a batter short, at least one batter short. And on the other side, you have this Padres team that has some good bats, and I think, like you said, there's a couple bats in that lineup right now who aren't, achieving at their normal level. And if they can just get that up with the solid pitching they have, the solid starters, there's injuries in the rotation, but nonetheless, solid starting staff, pretty good bullpen. Put that all together, I mean, that's a team that can make a deep run. That's a team that could potentially challenge the Dodgers, who I think we all just sort of go, well, the Dodgers are the best team. Well, sure, yeah, but it's a long season, and the Padres are playing good ball, and everyone's trying to overcome injuries. And then sometimes you get to the end of the year, you're surprised by what you see. So, yeah, I mean, this is a fantastic race. We're going to see the Padres now play these teams. I think they have 3 more against the Giants. They have 7 against the Dodgers in June. So, things are going to get separated here a little bit as we roll into the All-Star break. And then, of course, we'll really see what happens. But an exciting division. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of the series. Something about those late night West Coast series that are always kind of fun when you get 2 talented teams like this.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the Diamondbacks may be taking a huge hit if Corbin Burns out beyond a month or 2. I mean, if this is season ending, I think that kind of ends the Diamondback season. Unfortunately, they're 3 games under 500, and you see the odds have shifted 48-1. I mean, you could make the case that Burns is either the most valuable player on the Diamondbacks or top 3, I think, without a doubt, with Carroll and Gallen and Marte. The Giants are still there. I mean, look, it was funny, Matt. We were talking maybe about a week or 2 ago about maybe 4 teams fighting to make the postseason. This thing could thin out quick, and it could be 2.
It's funny how quickly it changes. The long baseball season, it changes quickly. Yeah, Diamondbacks, I know both of us were a little bit bullish on them, and then you start losing games, you lose a top pitcher, and next thing you know, you're almost writing them off. They still have talent there, and maybe they can make a push to get into the postseason. But yeah, right now it feels like they're dropping off, and San Francisco's in a precarious spot. But I still think the top 2 teams in the division are going to give us a fun race here over the summer.
Red Sox, definitely the unluckiest team in baseball, and we're waiting for that luck to shift. But, Matt, it may not happen until next year. That's the way baseball is. They clearly are losing every 1-run game and having a hard time early in games, too. 7-6 the final yesterday. They lose to the Angels at home. That one stung. And look, I think the Red Sox probably will get right and start winning these games, but we've seen it all too often before. That over the course of a season, you can have bad luck the entire year. We just have to remember this for next year. I guess that's the point. But Boston has fallen out of this fast.
Yeah, they really are, and they're getting jumped by these teams in their division that we didn't expect to be all that good. And And look, maybe they'll jump them back, but they got to worry about jumping a whole lot of other teams in the AL too. And it's just starting to feel like the task gets tougher every day, and the pitching just isn't there. They have a legit ace, and after that, it's been rough. The offense solid, but we know about some of the injuries. They still have a card to play. Top call up in baseball, is Roman Anthony ever coming up? We'll find out. So there's still some things that can happen, but at the same time, it is starting to feel like one of those years where they're going to look back and say, "Man, it just wasn't our year." And I'll be very curious to see what they can do. I mean, the Yankees, they're running away with it now, and that's obviously a tall order. And when you get that much distance, it separates. And like I said, even with those other teams, jumpable, there's still a lot of other teams in the AL they got to get over. So they got to get it together and get it together fast. I don't know if they're going to make a move this year other than internal moves. And they're just kind of one of those teams that I don't want to say it's a lost year, but it's definitely a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, and I believe they were plus 120 or 130 to make the playoffs at the beginning of the season. They're now plus 285, as you can see there. Roman Anthony, who I know that you're a little Matt, as far as getting called up. Honestly, Matt, I got to tell you, it's probably the worst time to ever call him up, because then all of a sudden, all this pressure on him to think that he is going to turn it around. So I don't see that happening. But Matt, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. We'll see you again next week.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
New sports betting tax coming to Illinois in a different way. Chris Altruda of Third Planet Media joins us next to discuss how. Don't go away.
Falcons are actually relieved that he's kind of not there to create more of a distraction. Look, I said it the day it happened. It was one of the stupider decisions I've ever seen by a professional NFL franchise to sign a quarterback to a $180 million contract and then draft his replacement exactly 5 weeks later. This was a terrible organizational decision by the Falcons. Now, they're going to spin this, and this is what's annoying about the Falcons and their PR staff. They're going to spin this as if this is the plan we had all along. This is the plan that when, Kirk Cousins either got hurt or didn't play well or got too old, we were going to have Penix come in. And guess what? The new plan is now we're going to keep Kirk Cousins as a backup. So if Michael Penix gets hurt, we told you so. We were right for keeping him on the roster. We were smart for keeping him here. No, this whole thing has been an abject disaster.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high, but the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Steelers' interest in Aaron Rodgers as a joke. Your boy went off about the entire situation and why it taken so long to forget him. Terry Bradshaw getting involved.
Yeah, and saying basically, what are you bringing him in for 1 year? All of this drama for 1 year at this guy, where he is now in his career, is he's washed.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire. First time we're going to check in with Chris Altruda of Third Planet Media here on NewsWire. Great to have him here on the show to break down everything that's going on in sports betting, very specifically in Illinois. Some breaking news we got yesterday. Chris, thanks for coming on the show. Great to meet you and appreciate the time.
Hey, Craig, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it as well.
All right, so, Chris, a lot of the different states across the United States are seeing some big numbers coming in from sports betting, and especially in a state like Illinois, which is one of the top markets in the country. Some states are having a hard time passing through legislation, some very definitive percentage numbers, meaning that New York, taxing people 50% on sports betting seems like the state of Illinois did things a little bit differently to get things done. And I'm wondering your thoughts on this new tax that they have determined to put into action.
Well, this tax this year was a bit of a surprise, considering it's technically the second straight year that they've overhauled the tax rates for sports betting. Last year, they went from a flat 15% rate to a progressive one that has a floor of 20% and a ceiling of 40% based on revenue thresholds. And those tax rates, in terms of the ask by Governor Pritzker last year, because he wanted to raise $200 million in additional revenue, was working. The tax increase in terms of revenue for this fiscal year heading into the final 3 months was $150 million. So it was on pace to reach that $200 million target. The budget shortfall this year for overall in the state was $1 billion. And this new tax apparently became something that was kicked around in Springfield in the final stages of the budget negotiation and wound up getting through without very much resistance from the industry because it was so late.
Yeah, so do you think that, anytime something like this happens in a state, the next question, Chris, that we ask ourselves is it's a copycat world. So naturally, if this thing got passed in Illinois, and, what could we see in other states, whether it is Ohio or Philadelphia? I mean, we're all seeing so much money come in, and it feels like the states want a bigger piece of the pie. I guess the bigger question is, why did they start off with the number they did? Because they probably could have passed something a little bit bigger.
I think some of it is when you originally pass it, you're trying to be as fair and as equitable as possible. And I think when you see newer states come online, they have the benefit of seeing numbers that maybe exceeded what were promised among earlier states that implemented. So you look at, say, a state like Louisiana, which has a 10% tax rate, but Louisiana also has a system where the operator is allowed to deduct only X amount of promotional revenue dollars per year. That's an evolutionary adjustment in terms of state law. Here, I don't see an appetite for this specific wager because it looks to be a heavier legislative lift as opposed to amending a tax rate. I still think that is, if a state wants to do that, I think that is the path of least resistance, as opposed to implementing a new, essentially a wager surcharge, which is the first of its kind.
So to break it down a little bit further, it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's 25 cents on a specific number, and then it moves up to 50 cents on another number. And I think the 50-cent number is maybe 20 million, but my estimation, at least from what I'm seeing with numbers, is they're going to hit that 50 cents pretty quick.
Right. So it's each operator has the $20 million threshold. So FanDuel has 20 million, DraftKings has 20 million, so on and so forth. In the case of FanDuel and DraftKings, based on the numbers from last year, they would be at that 20 million threshold by September because the fiscal year starts July 1. So they would be paying that 50-cent surcharge on every wager accepted pretty much 9 months out of the year. And there are the other 8 books that are in the state. I would say 4 of them, Fanatics, BetMGM, ESPN Bet, and probably Bet365, would get near that 20 million threshold, but they would not be over it at a level like FanDuel and DraftKings would be because they take over 100 to 150 million bets a year.
Now, Chris, last question for you. We've got a minute to go. Do you think that this surcharge is prohibitive for ESPN Bet and some of these smaller operators? Can they afford to keep going in these markets not being FanDuel and DraftKings?
It definitely makes it more difficult. I think out of that second tier, I think Fanatics is the one that gets impacted the most because they have been most aggressive in the past year in terms of their promotional spend to gain market share. And it's been successful to that end. The question is, when you have a year-over-year growth like Fanatics is going to have, and in the case of Illinois, they will end up in the 35% tax bracket by the end of the fiscal year. So now you've set this expectation. Are you going to be able to sustain it? And all of a sudden now you're paying this new tax if you get to that 20 million threshold by the end of the fiscal year. So I think they have the biggest challenge.
Chris, great to catch up with you. Thanks for appearing on the show.
Craig, thank you.
Jacob Camenker joins us next in the U.S.
the Knicks really got past that playoff dragon for them that really stood in their way. So for the New York Knicks to be the Celtics and then an outright favorite to win the Eastern Conference Finals, that's where the disappointment is.
The goalposts got moved, right? Because when you went into the Celtics series, a lot of Knicks fans said they weren't going to beat it. This, I'll say this is more unprecedented than the 99 run when they were the 8 seed.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
No one is going to pick Indiana. No one's going to pick Indiana to make it close, honestly. Like, you can't really, you could get tremendous odds if you pick OKC in 7.
I think that taking the series over 5.5 games, the last 2 NBA Finals series ended in 5. I think this one goes 6. I think the Thunder will get the job done, but I think the Pacers are just too strong of a team and too talented of a team and too deep of a team to lose in 5 or fewer games.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune in to Game Time Decisions weekdays on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to see Jacob Camenker back with us in the house. Feels like that must mean football season is closing in. Let's get to the very latest from Jacob over at Sporting News. Jacob, bit of a surprise yesterday in the NFL. I mean, I guess we'll attack the story head on, but wonder if this is a non-story in a few weeks. Very bizarre. Frank Ragnow, arguably best center in the NFL, if not top 3 center with the Lions. Very important piece to their puzzle. Announces his retirement. So, I mean, I hate to be cynical about it, Jacob, but there was some rumors that he wanted an extension. Are you buying this? Are we going to be doing the opposite story here in a couple weeks?
I don't think so. Based off of how he said he was retiring, it sounded like he was contemplating for a long time whether or not he'd be physically healthy enough to be able to play. And this is a guy who's been often injured throughout his career, yet has played through toe and foot and ankle and groin injuries, and perhaps most notably, in 2020, he played almost all of a game after fracturing his throat, which is one of the more bizarre NFL injuries you'll ever hear about. So I don't think he'll be coming back. I think the Lions had some semblance of an idea that, hey, he might actually retire and call it quits. It sounded like it was coming down the pipe. I thought he might play one more year, but it just sounds like he can't physically do it. And as you hinted at, this is a huge loss for the Lions. I mean, we're talking about, as you mentioned, a guy who might be the best center in football. Creed Humphrey might have something to say about that, but Ragnow was as steady as they come. That offensive line was a massive strength for the Lions, and now they don't have a clear-cut replacement for him. They have Graham Glasgow, who's a veteran who's been around, played guard and center. He'd be an okay stopgap, and they drafted Tate Ratledge, a guard from Georgia, in the 2nd round this year. But either way, those guys are primarily guards, so you're talking about moving someone to center long-term to replace one of the best players in the league. It could pan out, but I don't know if it will this season. It might take some time before they're ready to go with that.
Yeah, as long as Decker and Sewell are there, I think they're good. But yes, they could take a little bit of a hit at center, without a doubt. The Lions still favored, by the way, to win the NFC North, followed by the Packers at plus 280. Minnesota is 3-1, and the Bears are plus 480 as well. All right, now let's move on to another big question in the NFL, which seems unresolved, which is Kirk Cousins. Once upon a time, getting a mega contract from the Atlanta Falcons, and in short order was shown the bench. Cousins not at OTAs for the Falcons. I don't know how this is going to play out. Something tells me, Jacob, we get to the last preseason game of the NFL, and like a thief in the night, some team just takes them off the Falcons and, puts them on their team. I don't think we're going to get any resolution here. And by the way, hate to say it for Cousins, but Jacob, if you're the Falcons, what's the rush?
No, you're right. There is no real rush. The Falcons are going to be eating a massive amount of dead money if they get rid of Kirk Cousins at any point. And Michael Penix, they spent a high draft pick on, but he's cheap comparatively to other quarterbacks in the league. So they can afford to keep a high-end backup like Cousins, which is why I think you're right. This situation isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But what I imagine might happen is, like you said, either at the end of the preseason, if a team looks at their quarterback room and says, man, we really just don't have the talent here. We need someone who could potentially take our team to the next level. Cousins becomes the obvious target for any team looking to add at the position. And I think you also can look at this and say, hey, odds are maybe one quarterback is going to get hurt at some point, or, a young quarterback doesn't live up to expectations. But we've seen in the past, I remember when Teddy Bridgewater tore up his knee during either training camp or the preseason, the Vikings traded, I think, a first-round pick for Sam Bradford because they were so desperate for a proven veteran starter at the position. I think the Falcons are waiting to see if they can have a similar situation arise. I don't have any intel on that, but it would make sense for them to say, we're going to hold Cousins as a backup. Then if Penix struggles, you could throw him into the fold. But if a great offer comes around, then you can take it and start to build for the future. So I think you're right. This is going to be a long-term thing. I don't think that he's going to be on the Falcons as the backup for the entire season, but stranger things have happened in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely so. And, maybe Penix isn't that good. You never know. Sports are funny, man. You just never know from one day to the next what's going to happen. Speaking of the Falcons here, you have a column up at USA Today. Kyle Pitts, I thought was finally coming into his own a little bit last year. He's that guy every year, Jacob, that you think is going to have a huge year and then, underperforms a little bit. Last year, a little bit better than that. There's some rumblings that maybe he's played his last snap with the Atlanta Falcons, and there'll be no shortage of team that want to sort of bail the Falcons out on this, but still a very young player, a lot of potential here, and there are some good fits for him as well if the Falcons want to cut bait.
Yeah, I think this is a player who I'm going to be watching not just during the offseason, but the lead up to the NFL trade deadline, because if the Falcons are in a situation where they're not in as much contention as they believe they're going to be, they might be willing to move Pitts because he has an expiring contract. And I think you look around the league and there are a handful of teams. The Chargers stand out as one where I think Pitts could potentially thrive because Justin Herbert throws 23% of his targets to tight ends, or at least he did last year. And they don't have a clear-cut number one option. I like Will Dissly. I've always liked him as a player. But, if you can tell me you can add an athlete like Kyle Pitts to the mix and let Jim Harbaugh work with him and give Justin Herbert a super athletic target, that's something, if I'm the Chargers, I'd be interested in. Now, it does, again, this sounds like a situation where the Falcons don't necessarily want to move Kyle Pitts right now. I think they want to see if they can, in this fifth season, finally get it all to click. But if it's not, and they're not quite in contention, I could see them moving off of him and just saying, hey, we're going to use the assets we get for him to build more around Penix over the next 3 years.
And meanwhile, that division, seemingly, according to FanDuel, very much up in the air outside of the Saints. By the way, I think the Saints odds are horrible. I would put them at like 30-1 to win the division. But anybody else has a shot. I mean, even the Panthers, Jacob, it seems to me, you look at 3 teams within 4-1 odds, not discounting the Panthers at all, it would seem like it's a coin flip.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are moving on to yet another new offensive coordinator because for the second consecutive offseason, they've had their offensive coordinator hired to be a head coach elsewhere. So we don't know how that is going to impact Baker Mayfield. He was excellent last year after losing Dave Canales. How much of that was Liam Cohen? How much can the Buccaneers really hold this in place? So, if they take a little step back and the Falcons can take a step forward, I think it becomes an intriguing 2-team race there like it's been the last couple of years. But the Panthers are lurking. Their offense could be better. If Bryce Young takes a step forward with those young receivers, I think they could be good on that side of the ball. The bigger question is just, how is their defense going to perform? They were very, very, very bad last year. They've tried to overhaul things there, added a lot of youth there. If that can come together a little bit more, I think that the Panthers can be more competitive than people realize. I don't know if they'll challenge the top two teams in this division, but they could work their way into the mix here, or at least get back towards being a 500 team this year.
Let's hit on the final topic, a trade that kind of flew under the radar, Jacob, a little this past week. Two teams, potential Super Bowl contenders. I know San Francisco maybe a little bit further away than what Philadelphia will be going into the season, but Bryce Huff goes from one team to the other. Huff a little checkered, I would say, based on last year's numbers and injuries, etc. But, San Francisco looking for an upgrade on the outside. They get one here.
Yeah, and we got to keep in mind the 49ers don't have a lot of financial resources at their disposal. They did finally pay Brock Purdy. That was kind of the big thing hanging over their head, but they've had to rework the roster around him a little bit in order to make room for that big money deal. So I think taking a low-risk flyer, just this late-round pick or conditional fifth-round pick for Bryce Huff, is a good gamble. He had success in Robert Saleh's scheme. He can just add some pass rushing depth to that defensive line, which desperately needs it outside of Nick Bosa. And for the Eagles, this just represents they got Huff in the Hassan Reddick trade, I believe. It didn't quite pan out. So they're just moving on from him and just saying, hey, we'll take the draft asset and develop some of these other younger pass rushers. So I think it's a sensible deal for both squads, but it has a little more upside present day for the 49ers.
Great to see you, Jacob, once again. I know that when I saw you a couple of weeks ago, we said we'll be talking about Aaron Rodgers next time I see you. And I'm going to predict the next time I see you, we will be doing that conversation next couple of weeks. Thanks for coming on.
Here's hoping, Craig. Thanks for having me.
All right, Grant McCauley comes up next to talk some Braves baseball. Can't wait to do it.
Falcons are actually relieved that he's kind of not there to create more of a distraction. Look, I mean, I said it the day it happened. It was one of the stupider decisions I've ever seen by a professional NFL franchise to sign a quarterback to a $180 million contract and then draft his replacement exactly 5 weeks later. This was a terrible organizational decision by the Falcons. Now, they're going to spin this, and this is what's annoying about the Falcons and their PR staff. They're going to spin this as if this is the plan we had all along. This is the plan that when, Kirk Cousins either got hurt or didn't play well or got too old, we were going to have Penix come in. And guess what? The new plan is now we're going to keep Kirk Cousins as a backup. So if Michael Penix gets hurt, we told you so. We were right for keeping him on the roster. We were smart for keeping him here. No, this whole thing has been an abject disaster.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high, but the action isn't just on the field.
Rearranging that rhythm. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Steelers' interest in Aaron Rodgers as a joke. Your boy went off about the entire situation and why it taken so long to forget him. Terry Bradshaw getting involved.
Yeah, and saying basically, what are you bringing him in for 1 year? All of this drama for 1 year at this guy, where he is now in his career is he's washed.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Great to have Grant McCauley from 92.9 The Game breaking down the Atlanta Braves and thus far their season. Let's just call it what it is. It's been a disappointment. 4 games under 500. I'm stunned. I thought it would at least be the other way around. Injuries have hit yet again. The Braves will break it all down with Grant here on the show. And, some news, too, with the Braves making a coaching change in the month of late May, June. You don't generally see that. Grant, great to have you back here on NewsWire. Really appreciate it. Let's take a look at the standings right now. the Nationals have moved ahead of the Braves in the standings. It feels like that first 6-7 games of the season is going to end up crushing the Braves. I mean, they can't get back. They got back to 500. Now they're back under 500. And then you know what? Let's start off with this. The coaching change that was made yesterday, moving the third base coach off, bringing Freddie Gonzalez back into the organization. That had to catch a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, blast from the past. And as always, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I didn't know how much news we'd really have this week of the coaching staff variety or otherwise. But yeah, I think you're right on with the frustrations of this Braves club, the disappointment of this Braves club. That 0-7 start clearly was an anchor that they've had to kind of drag around. They got back over 500. But I think when you kind of start to peel back the layers of this onion, there haven't been the answers that they need hitting wise. There's no hiding that. If they scored more runs, they wouldn't be in this position. And I'm not talking about the 2023 offensive barrage that made history. I'm talking about a swing of 15, maybe 20 runs this year that could have the Braves swinging 6, 7, maybe more wins in the other direction because they played so many one-run games. So that brings me to the third base coaching change, which I think had a lot to do with some of the decision-making process and some sins that resulted in outs at the plate and resulted in questions to be answered. Too many of them, I feel like. So Freddie Gonzalez brings a wealth of experience. He was on Bobby Cox's staff as a third base coach. Brian Snitker, I believe, was the third base coach for Freddie Gonzalez in a different life. So a lot of connective tissue here and a comfort between those two guys. And I think that's kind of what the club was looking at. If you make a change, you have to trust the guy that comes in the door next. And they felt like with Freddie's availability that they could do that. Does this change the trajectory of the season? Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but it is one small thing that they wanted to address.
Yeah, they have to hit. I mean, that's the key here. Acuna is back. He's done his job. But and if I told you that they would, call up a kid named Drake Baldwin and his OPS would push 900, you'd say, "Wow, the Braves are probably doing great." But it seems like the perfect storm of offense has hit yet again. Albies is having a tough year. Michael Harris is having a tough year. I feel like Riley and Olsen, maybe one of them gets hot over the course of the year, although Olsen's been a little bit better. But I mean, this is sort of the same dynamic that they dealt with a year ago, Grant, is that the struggles on offense have reared their heads again. And, at least from sort of following the Braves along like I do and watching on TV, there's some like real concern that Michael Harris this season, is not going to get out of it. And I wonder if Ozzie Albies will pick it up too.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to wonder because if you look at Ozzie, it goes back to essentially the start of 2024. So you're looking at about 162 game sample size, which calls him a 249 hitter with 15 homers and 70 ribs and 35 doubles. Not a terrible year of output for a second baseman, but nowhere close to what he's capable of. I mean, even if you give the grade on the curve that second base is not the biggest offensive output, Ozzie Albies has been the exception of that rule many times in his career. For Harris, I think it's a swing decision thing as much as anything. The discipline at the plate is not there. A sub 600 OPS. He's not drawing the walks. That's clearly an issue. I'm not saying that he needs to turn into what Marcell Ozuna has turned into this year and have a career best walk rate, but it would help to have some selectivity there. I don't think you worry as much about Riley, about Olsen, and about some of the other guys that have had some highs and lows this year. But those two in particular, Albies, who has shown signs the last few weeks, I will give him credit for that, of hitting the ball harder and more consistently. You need to see it, and you need these veteran guys who have been there and done that, like an Ozzie Albies, a Matt Olson, an Austin Riley, to simply play up to their level. Because even with Ronald Acuna Jr. back, he's just one guy. He's one guy who is greater than most of the guys he's on the field with at any given moment. But you can't have had the expectation that he's going to walk through the door and this thing's just magically going to work again. And that has been the conundrum for the Braves for basically a 13-month sample size dating back to May 1st of last year. They are 21st in Major League Baseball in runs scored after their record-setting 2023. That is shocking.
Yeah, no, it is. It's still unbelievable to me that all of them went cold at the same time again this year. It's like a repeat of last year. The pitch, meanwhile, is the only reason why the Braves are not 10 games under 500 because they've been so good. Sale's awesome again. Schwellenbach has been great. Grant Holmes has been the surprise, 64 Ks and 64 innings pitched. And Elder will back the rotation, but, they're going to have to, find a replacement for another stud, AJ Smith-Shawver, who was the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year, who's now out of the mix. So, it's a pitching factory with the Braves. So my estimation is they'll find somebody else. They'll come up and pitch well. So this is the stronghold for the Braves right now.
It'd certainly be nice. I don't know who that person is right now that you call upon. Of course, I didn't have Spencer Schwellenbach on my list of guys who were going to come up and do what he did a year ago from Double A. So these things can happen. They can be unforeseen, but to count on it every year, I don't know if that's necessarily going to help the Braves this particular year. But yeah, Grant Holmes has been, I feel like, kind of a glue guy in the rotation. He gets a lot of swing and miss. He's a little bit better than you might realize. And then on the flip side of that, he's covering innings and giving you quality starts. It's 9 consecutive outings pitching into the 6th inning. The Braves don't have anybody else doing that right now. Chris Sale's getting right. He looks good again. That's a great thing to see. Spencer Schwellenbach looks dynamic after going through a rough patch. And of course, you got Spencer Strider working his way back in. And I think we're going to see better days from him ahead. That's the makings of a good rotation. They do have questions in the bullpen, though. Iglesias has struggled. Some of their other setup guys, I think there are some questions about, even Daysbel Hernandez, Dylan Lee, a little bit walk prone for Hernandez, homer prone for Lee. Pierce Johnson's been good, but if they're going to do shopping, Craig, I think it's going to be for this pitching staff to help fortify that, but they've got to hit. That's the bottom line. There's no margin for error. Brian Snitker has said that time and again with all these one-run games the Braves have lost. In the month of May, 9 one-run losses. That's a huge swing, potentially, in what the standings could look like.
Yeah, no doubt. Grant, as always, you're bringing it. And thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll catch up again later in the season as the National League East kind of gets things figured out as we go. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, Grant McCauley, 92.9 The Game, does a great job covering the Atlanta Braves. When we come back next, it's time for some last licks. It looks like Bijan Robinson could be taking his talents to the Olympic Games. We'll talk about what that means. We'll also get a preview of the upcoming Super Regionals as the College Baseball World Series transcends on Omaha in the month of June. We'll be right back with more NewsWire here on SportsGrid after this quick timeout. Make sure you stay with us. We'll be back after this.
Falcons are actually relieved that he's kind of not there to create more of a distraction. Look, I mean, I said it the day it happened. It was one of the stupider decisions I've ever seen by a professional NFL franchise to sign a quarterback to a $180 million contract and then draft his replacement exactly 5 weeks later. This was a terrible organizational decision by the Falcons. Now, they're going to spin this, and this is what's annoying about the Falcons and their PR staff. They're going to spin this as if this is the plan we had all along. This is the plan that when, Kirk Cousins either got hurt or didn't play well or got too old, we were going to have Penix come in. And guess what? The new plan is now we're going to keep Kirk Cousins as a backup. So if Michael Penix gets hurt, we told you so. We were right for keeping him on the roster. We were smart for keeping him here. No, this whole thing has been an abject disaster.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rhythm. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 18.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. It's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Steelers' interest in Aaron Rodgers as a joke. Your boy went off about the entire situation and why it's taken so long to forget him. Terry Bradshaw getting involved.
Yeah, and saying basically, what are you bringing him in for 1 year? All of this drama for 1 year at this guy, where he is now in his career is he's washed.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. On our show tomorrow, we're going to have some fun talking some hockey. Joe Madden will be along with us to preview Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals between Edmonton and Florida. But as we wrap up the show, we'll get into a little College World Series discussion, Super Regionals going on starting this weekend, also the latest on the Olympic Games. and a running back you may be familiar with in Bijan Robinson. Time now for some last licks. Well, yes, sports betting does transcend to the Olympic Games and even to some track meets outside of them. U.S. track star Gabby Thomas, for the second time, is reporting that she is being harassed by people who are wagering on sports. In fact, she says that not only has she been harassed by somebody who potentially bet on her when she either won or lost, but she's also being followed as well. Needless to say, some extra precautions will be taken into her safety. And just a reminder, these athletes don't care whether or not you win or lose a bet. But needless to say, we'll find out if there's anything more behind it with the Olympic Games coming up. Probably going to be the most bet Olympic Games in our history. So needless to say, take a breather here for those of you who are betting on this. Gabby Thomas, second time reporting she's being harassed and heckled by people who are betting on sports. All right, now let's move on to the upcoming Olympic Games. I don't know if you may have heard this or not, but it definitely looks like flag football is coming to the Olympic Games here in the United States in Los Angeles. And there is some debate as to whether or not football players in the National Football League should be allowed to participate. They've gone back and forth with this. Well, they finally decided that some NFL players will be allowed to participate. It'll be some sort of a mix between college athletes, NFL athletes, and maybe even athletes from the United Football League as well. One player has said, hey, look, I am in, and that should be very happy for us to watch, but probably unhappy for the Atlanta Falcons because, of course, they don't want to see their players get hurt. Bijan Robinson says that he would be very into taking part of the upcoming Olympic Games in Los Angeles and playing flag football. Now, needless to say, there are going to be some players who are going to be blocked by their teams. We may not hear this out front, but behind the scenes, they'll say, hey, look, we don't need you doing this ahead of the season. Keep an eye on the story as it goes forward, because I have a feeling you're going to see a lot more athletes from the NFL wanting to participate. Let's count in Bijan Robinson as one of them. Okay, super regionals are now officially set in college baseball. That is correct. The road to Omaha now rolls on. Last night, one of the bigger events, University of Miami winning to move on to the Super Regional, where they will play Louisville after beating Southern Miss. All the finals are officially in, and we know the field of the Super Regionals. We thought we would check in with Ben Stevens. He's got a preview of what we can expect coming up this weekend.
The NCAA baseball tournament is already underway, and so far, May and June Madness have lived up to the billing. It has been a tournament of chaos. Our top two national seeds, number one Vanderbilt, number one Texas, out before even reaching the Super Regionals. For Vandy, they become the first number one national seed in history to fail to even make it to the regional final. The SEC sent 13 of its 16 schools to the NCAA baseball tournament, and already half and then some have been eliminated after the opening weekend. So where do we look in the midst of all this chaos for a national championship bet? Still in the SEC? Well, the conference has won 5 straight national championships, and I'm looking at Arkansas at a plus 350 price. The Hogs are the favorites. I think the Razorbacks get it done in Omaha. Craig, back to you.
Thanks very much, Ben. Early line coming up tomorrow morning. More college baseball discussion. That time of the year, folks. Road to Omaha is on. All right. We got to get out of here, folks. We got about a minute to go. Stick around. Smiley Kaufman's coming up next at 12. That's followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast at 3 o'clock Eastern. Hopefully you caught me on his show yesterday. Then at 6 o'clock, we've got Front Office Sports for 30 minutes, followed by Game Time Decisions. That's from 6 to 8 o'clock tonight, followed by In-Game Live Game Day. And then Gabe's got to wait for the Stanley Cup Finals for one more night. He's got Sports Rage tonight. I'm sure he will be breaking it all down. Thanks again to Matt Lutovsky for coming on the show from Sporting News. Also, Grant McCauley from 92.9 The Game. Jacob Camenker from USA Today. And the first time we've ever had Chris Altruda on the show talking some sports betting as well. Again, thanks to our director, Luke, and from my producer, Frank. I'm Craig. We'll be right back here for our next edition of NewsWire. That's tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Get ready to break down some hockey and NBA because we've got that coming up with the finals on Wednesday and the finals on Thursday. Believe me, here at SportsGrid, we can't wait for those to get underway. Trust me. I'll see you tonight for those of you catching the Marlins broadcast before the Rockies game. For everybody else, I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern for our next edition of NewsWire. Have a great day, everyone. See you later.